Most people have these big dreams and they want to conquer the world and do all this great stuff. Just humble ourselves, right? And just learn the basics. If you want to get rich in real estate, learn the business first. We'll talk about the dollar. It is losing value. So our values are influenced by that. We live with more of an instant gratification mindset because the money loses value. And when the money loses value, we tend not to plan for the future as much. Everybody must continually read old books, listen to old music, watch old movies, and watch old TV shows. Just realize how much life has changed and to see how much inflation has occurred and how the standard of living has changed.
Good day, everyone. This is Dr. David Phelps of the Freedom Founders Mastermind Community and the Dentist Freedom Blueprint Podcast. Today, I've been looking forward to having a great conversation with a longtime friend, I'd say colleague in the space, but it's Mr. Jason Hartman. Jason, how are you, sir?
David, it is great to be here. And, I always, over many years, I've always enjoyed our conversations and just happy to be back on the show. I was on one of your first few shows a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you back because I always try to think about, how do I synthesize and digest and bring to the forefront some of my great interviews, my guests like you, who have a very wide experience of background, and how do I bring that down? And so I tried to find something that's digestible. There's too much out there, Jason. So we kill a whole show talking about, but I think it's always important to bring out something about your background experience. For those of our listeners who haven't heard of you, don't know you, let's give a little bit of that. But let me just again start by saying that the people I most appreciate and have the privilege and opportunity to, what I say, run with. That means the circles we go in, the groups we've been a part of and are a part of today. To me, those kind of relationships are what have allowed me to do what I get to do today. And I know you're like me. It's like we have our own lives, but we're also having the ability and we have a desire to serve other people. It's the impact. Yeah. What do we do with the knowledge we have and what we've worked to gain? And Jason, you and I go back quite a few years. And I just, I know the first time we were connected, I think it was by our mutual friend, Jim Palmer, by the way. I think that's where the first connection came from.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
It was actually Jim, and you think it would be real estate, but it was Jim. So again, your network's your net worth. And we got connected and we started talking. Then we were in mastermind groups together. And I love getting to know what's behind the person, right? Because the person themselves can stand up and, speak in front of a group and, they great experience and they've got a lot of knowledge. You go, wow, that's very cool. But what makes the person the person? Why do they do what they do? So can you give us a little bit of the background of Jason Hartman, up to date, and then we'll talk about what the meat of the show today, which will be really about the current marketplace and the opportunities that we have.
Sure. Yeah. So, David, I grew up poor in Los Angeles, California, and didn't like that very much. I noticed by about ninth grade that all of the prettiest girls in school were hanging out with the rich guys, and I wanted to be in that group, and so I thought.
And you're like me. You're very beefy, and you play. Probably we're fullback on the football team. Yeah. I mean,
sure.
I yeah. No, I got that.
We're clearly joking about that, folks. And so, when I was 16 years old, I saw an infomercial for a real estate guru, and I really got very intrigued by it. And I went out and got his book. I read 3 chapters. I put it down. My mom picked it up, read the rest. And about 2 years later, she had been going to all these real estate seminars and reading books and so forth and learning about it. And she, said, there's one in Anaheim this weekend. Why don't you go? And so I went to that. And about a year earlier, when I was 17 years old, I discovered Earl Nightingale, Dennis Waitley, Jim Rohn, and Zig Ziglar, my 4 great mentors who really changed my life. I've been fortunate to have Dennis Waitley on my podcast before, and he's the last one standing of those 4 greats. And, I remember Earl Nightingale saying something on his cassette tapes that I had listened to repeatedly over and over. And he said, if you want to he was talking about just taking the first step. Most people have these big dreams and they want to conquer the world and do all this great stuff. And he was saying, just humble ourselves, right? And just learn the basics. And he used real estate as an example, just coincidentally. And he said, if you want to get rich in real estate, learn the business first. And so remembering that he said that, I just, after that seminar in Anaheim, I enrolled in Century 21 Real Estate School. And by my first year of college, I was now 19. Yeah, I was 19. And I had my real estate license in hand. I started selling real estate part time for Century 21. And because I loved real estate investing and I really just wanted to be an investor, what I did is I started selling government repos, HUD and VA repos in LA, Orange County, but mostly those areas were too expensive. So it was mostly in the Inland Empire, San Bernardino and Riverside in Southern California. And I worked with a lot of first time buyers, but a lot of investors like those properties too. And so I had quite a few investor clients that I got. I would place little ads, little classified ads in the Orange County Register, and people would call in, leave messages on my phone machine. You can tell how long ago this was. And I would work with them. Anyway, about 6 months into my career selling real estate part time for Century 21 while I was going to college, one of my clients, Jim Wool, had purchased about 4 properties from me, I think. And he said, Jason, this one property I bought from you, I don't really like it. Why don't you take the listing, sell it for me, and I'll buy something else? And I said, Jim, I don't want to sell it for you. I want to buy it from you. And I had my first rental property while still living at home. Okay. and I had that first rental property. I was 20 years old now, and I rented it out. And, you could say I would have had every reason, David, to give up because I had to evict my first tenant. And even though I had to evict them, and that was tough, they just were deadbeats. They stopped paying rent, and I'd knock on the door like a little kid. I mean, you think I look young now? Imagine then, right? And I'd knock on the door and say, "Hey, please pay me the rent." And they're like, "Screw you," And so I had to evict them, but I sold the property at a profit, and I just kept buying properties. And my career as a real estate broker progressed. I bought a real estate company. I later sold it to Coldwell Banker, and I've been investing all along the way. And for a while, my profits in investing were as much as I actually made in my whole career. Now, I do have to say now my career, my active income has surpassed my investment profits. Although, investing is pretty darn profitable if you do it right. So that's the story.
It's interesting that you talk about the transition from active income, which in your case was selling real estate, which is where we all start. I mean, we learn some skill, trade, business, have a job, and we trade time for the income. But you already had the sense because of the mentorship and the study of real estate that you started very early to understand that the actual asset and the ownership of the asset or the control of the asset is what was going to eventually build the wealth and have that passive cash flow that everybody dreams about. Because I want the passive cash flow, I want the multiple streams of income. How do I get that? And you and I both have the opportunity to speak with and help and assist high income, high net worth, but very technical specialists in their field, right? Same thing. They've elevated their lifestyle and their income because of their specialization in an area that they do well, right. But it's very fragile. It's very vulnerable. And so they all want that outside income. My pathway is similar to yours. Is I did things dual. I was a dentist, so that was my active income. But like you, I found a book early on. It was a different book, but it was by probably have it here somewhere, but I'll find it. William Nickerson. William Nickerson.
Oh yeah,
right?
Bill Nickerson is
right?
Bill Nickerson or William Nickerson is probably the world's first real estate guru.
Exactly.
And it's amazing. One of the things I say on my podcast all the time, David, is everybody must have a sense of history. And our culture, I would say, is falling apart nowadays. I mean, it is just terrible what is happening to the culture. At the same time, it is an amazing time to be alive because technology is incredible and we've all benefited from that. But the culture war is a disaster. And one of the things I say is everybody must continually read old books, listen to old music, watch old movies, and watch old TV shows. And I don't even mean old black and white movies, for example. Just watch movies from the 80s. Or even the 90s or the 70s, they don't have to be that old. And just realize how much life has changed. And to bring in William Nickerson, to see how much inflation has occurred and how the standard of living has changed and how our values have just deteriorated. and how people are so discourteous nowadays, and that it's just like take the money and run is sort of the mentality. It's awful. It's truly awful. But I think that's a symptom of the debasement of our money. And I interviewed on my podcast a guy named Saifuddin Amos, and he wrote a book. And I'm not a huge fan of cryptocurrency, but he did write a book called The Bitcoin Standard, which is fascinating. And the one thing I do want to share about that is he talks a lot about something that you and I both understand, and most of your listeners do. But he said it in a different way that just struck me in a different way. He calls it time preference, as opposed to saying the time value of money, or what a math, if you're speaking about it in math terms, in analyzing a real estate deal, we'd call it net present value, right? And so that's just how the value of money changes with inflation. And he talks all about how much better innovation was throughout history, and how much better culture was throughout history when people had what he calls a low time preference. Now, what does that mean? This is very interesting. When and this, I don't know that anybody does this very consciously, except maybe an investor who's financially sophisticated like your audience, and what you teach people in your mastermind group and so forth. But we all might be doing this subconsciously. We all realize that the value of the dollar, or whatever currency we live in and live under, whether it be the euro, the dollar, the Brazilian real, the peso, doesn't matter, the yen, doesn't matter. But we'll talk about the dollar. It is losing value. So our values are influenced by that. We live with more of an instant gratification mindset because the money loses value. And when the money loses value, we tend not to plan for the future as much. And, if you can even extract this, and Saifuddin doesn't say this, but I do. I'm quite a student of sociology. It's a fascinating topic to me. And look at the birth rate and the decline in birth rate of educated people.
Right.
And college, and this whole push to like, well, all women have to go to college. They got to be a strong women. They got to have a career. They can beat the men. Okay, that's fine if that's what you want to do.
Right.
But is this a part of a cultural hypnotism, or is it actually free choice? I mean, hey, I'm all for free choice, and everybody should do whatever they want to do. Okay, but when it becomes like an agenda, then it's a different thing, and that has destroyed the birth rate. And having children is going long on the future. Not having kids is shorting the future.
That's right. That's right.
And it is just sad to see how people they're just kind of living for today a lot of times. And I think that is largely intertwined by this ongoing, not only debasement of the culture, Hollywood is doing that, but the debasement of the money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I appreciate you giving some context to history and the study of sociology, because yes, there's a lot we can learn from that and the trends, and being a savvy businessman or investor, we want to stay ahead of the curve to the extent we can. That curve is moving very quickly. So understanding where we've been, where we're going, and why provides a lot of insights into how we might position ourselves, in as much as what do we want to personally try to do to deal with the culture. And we won't talk about that today, but I know we both have our own convictions about what we each one of us in our own right could individually be doing with responsibility. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.